So rather than do a full review of this car, I wanted to just give you my view on the things I love about this car, the things I really don't like, and some of the things that I would love for Tesla to change in the future if there were ever going to be a revised edition of this car. So first things first, the things I love about this car and the reasons why I chose it, apart from the fact I've wanted an electric car for a long time. Why did I choose this one? Well, having had it for about 3 or 4 months now, the performance is absolutely phenomenal. The acceleration is unbelievable in this car, and this is just the standard range plus, so it's not even that quick compared to the performance version of this car. It'll do 0 to 60 in about 5.2, 5.3 seconds, but that's not the bit that is good fun to me necessarily, because it's very rare I get to do a standing start 0 to 60. But the instant response you get from an electric car, and particularly this one, is just addictive. I would actually liken it to my Mazda MX-5 that I've got. Is locked away at the moment. That was never the fastest car on the road, clearly. In the corners, on B roads, it was just fun. It didn't matter that actually the bit that felt fast was just 0 to 20 miles an hour or 20 to 30 miles an hour. It was just when you tap your foot on the accelerator, it went. And that's exactly what this does. I mean, a lot better than the Mazda. And it never gets boring, never ever gets boring. The handling is really, really nice in this car. It took a little bit of getting used to because it's heavier than the BMW we had before, the 4 Series. But now I wouldn't go back actually. I really like the weightiness to it. Given that Tesla have so much tech in their cars and it feels quite digitized sometimes, actually I feel really connected to the road, and that's something I was a bit worried about, so that is fantastic. Item number 2 on this list of things I love about this car, well, actually it's not to do with this car specifically, but it's to do with Tesla as a whole, and that's its supercharger network. Now, when I was trying to convince my girlfriend that we should get an electric car, she was a skeptic, big time, didn't want to get one. And one of the big hurdles for her was, well, what if we want to go on holiday somewhere, you know? What helped me massively was the supercharger network. I was able to show her, and so were the staff in the Tesla store, that there was already a huge network of superchargers that meant you could get across the UK really easily and across Europe should you want to. So that actually kind of nipped that issue in the bud really, and was kind of the catalyst to getting us on the road to buying an EV. The supercharger network is extensive. I'll show you on screen just some of the locations in the UK, and you can see that long distance driving just isn't a problem. So that reassurance, that reliability is a huge, huge bonus for getting a Tesla. You know, I'd have no concern now I own an EV over getting a different electric car, but in that initial instance, it was good to be able to see that Tesla had already spent a lot of money, I suppose, on that infrastructure, and we knew that it would work. The third thing I love about this car, the software updates. And that might sound like a really strange thing to say about a car if you're not familiar with how Tesla is able to improve the software in its car, but obviously you've got this massive screen in here. As I go on to later, it is a double-edged sword, but the big bonus of having only a screen and no buttons, or not many buttons, is you can easily change the functionality and add new functionality. Funnily enough, I had to reshoot this video because the other day when I was filming it, I was talking about how I wanted Sentry mode, which is a security feature on the car. I wanted to be able to access the video files on the Tesla screen in the car. The day after, Tesla released an update for that very thing I was after. You can now access video footage on the screen itself. They're able to add new features, not just bug fixes or improve existing features, but add entirely new functionality to the car is just brilliant. I know other cars are doing this and starting to do this, but I feel like Tesla were pioneers in this space and they probably do it the best as well. So on to that Sentry mode. What is it? Well, basically, it's Tesla utilizing the cameras that are all around the car, which are used when you're driving for the autopilot and driver assistance features. They're using them to record footage when the car is stationary. So basically, if the car is alerted to something it thinks is an issue, or someone acting in a nefarious way perhaps, which is normally, to be honest, just someone walking in front of the car, but nonetheless that will sort of set an alert, it starts recording. So that's really invaluable potentially. It's just peace of mind. Hopefully I won't need to use it, but it's just really nice to have. Finally, design. I do love the shape of this car, particularly the front. I'm actually not so sure about the side, but I'll talk about that when I get onto some of the bad points. But I love the front of this car. It looks really, really cool and reminds me of some of the Porsches. The interior is quite Spartan and isn't to everybody's taste, but I really like it. Don't get me wrong, I love a car that's got a much more interesting design than this as well. I love the simple look to this, you know, things like the panoramic roof. This is really, really nice. You know, just fantastic, lets in plenty of light, spacious. Two things I do really like that they've incorporated into the design is the frunk, or the fruit, depending on what you want to call it, but basically there's an opening in the front where the engine should be, and that means you've got some extra space to put 2 or 3 shopping bags, I'd say. There's a couple of hooks in there that you can hook the bags onto. I'd love to see more EVs make use of that area. The other thing I like, because you haven't got that transmission tunnel, is in the back you've got a flat floor. It makes a huge difference actually if you haven't got that big lump in the middle that you have to put your legs either side of, then it makes it so much easier, and I'm really glad that that's not there. So what is it that I don't like about this car? Surely every Tesla owner absolutely loves their car and no, there can't be anything wrong with it whatsoever. Well, no, clearly not the case, and don't listen to anyone that tries to say that. There are some big issues with this car, and I'm going to start with the biggest for me. It's just this absolutely ginormous pillar. It's huge, just look at it. It really gets in the way of driving, particularly if you're going round a right-hand corner and it's a longer bend as well. Unfortunately, there's nothing they can do. There's not a software update to change the size of this pillar. I mentioned earlier how I do like the design of the car and the overall look, and that's true, but I'm probably not in love with it. I really like the front and looking at it from the front and kind of this front half, and I love the interior, but yeah, I'm not sure about the back. It gets quite bulbous, and from the side I always think it looks like a bubble car or one of the flying cars from the Jetsons. We probably prefer our 4 Series purely in terms of exterior styling. That brings me on to another point, which is the build quality on this car. You will have seen or perhaps heard of some of the issues Tesla have had in terms of build quality. I mean, overall it feels really good. There's soft touch materials, the seats are ever so comfortable. It's not what it's made of, it's just the way it's been put together in places. And I've got a video coming up shortly about when I had to take the car in for service because there were some issues, one of which was this. I mean, believe it or not, this has been fixed and it's still not quite right for me. Perhaps I've got a particularly bad model, because I've seen other Model 3s, they don't seem to have the same issues this one does, but there are some bits that don't quite line up how I'd want them to. And I know some people don't care about that sort of thing. I do, I really do. In areas this needs some work. I love this car so much and I wanted it so much that I'm willing to make a compromise, and I overlook those things. And if you've ever had a car that you really wanted, your dream car, then you do that, don't you? You overlook some of these, yeah, pretty big issues sometimes. So that's what I've done in this car. So onto the final points I wanted to make about this car, and this is just a wish list, to be honest, quite a short one, but things that aren't a problem and aren't the end of the world if they're not on the car, but stuff I'd really like to have after driving and living with it for a few months. The first thing is the Frunk access. I'd love to be able to access the front boot or fruit or Frunk. I'd love to be able to access it in an easier way. At the moment, the only way you can open it is through the Tesla app. Yeah, it's a bit of a pain. and it would be really, really cool to be able to get near it, perhaps just pop it, or if there was a handle, perhaps just open it that way. I don't know, I don't have the solution, but that would be really cool if you could do that. The other thing I would like to see on future Tesla models anyway is some buttons. Yeah, I know, I've spoken about how cool the screen is and the software updates, and because there aren't any buttons or very few, Tesla's able to do that very easily. But I think there is space under that screen for some important functional buttons, such as the climate control, a few other things like heated seats, just things that you don't want to be sort of looking for on the screen when you're driving, that you should just be able to feel around. And I think there's room to do that, and I'd like to see that on future Teslas. Just a few, you know, no more than 4 or 5 buttons. The other thing I would love to have had on this car is the cooling seats. So you get heated seats, but I'd love to have cooling seats. I think older models, older Teslas anyway, not the Model 3, some of them had that option. It might have been an optional extra, I can't remember. My understanding is that the heated seats are more efficient at warming you up than putting on the climate control, the fans. I'm making a guess with no evidence whatsoever, but making a guess that cooling seats would do the same instead of using the aircon. So I'd love to have had that. I'm presuming it's really expensive for Tesla to add in, and to simplify their manufacturing process they've got rid of it, but I'd love them to bring it back. That would be really, really cool. Overall, what can I say about this car? I think the best thing I can say about it is it's made a convert out of my girlfriend. Laura did not want an electric car. She was even really skeptical about getting a plug-in hybrid or even a hybrid. So it took me a few years to convince her that we could or should get one. Now we've got it, she absolutely loves it. There are things she misses about our old cars. I don't think we'd ever go back, and that's probably the biggest compliment I can give this car. Hopefully you've enjoyed this rather unscripted and unpolished video. If you've got any questions, then leave a comment down below, or if you want to let me know about your EV experience, then please, I really want to hear about them. You can also follow me on Twitter, which you can see on screen now. Again, ask me any questions about EVs or Tesla ownership. I'm happy to answer them. If you've enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We've got plenty more content on the way. See you next time.